First things first, thank you so much for having me. My name's Philip Milburn. I've spent the last, we believe it's 5.5 years now, researching obscure and oftentimes hidden medicines that chiefly popped up in the 1940s through to 60s, most of them. And the
Right.
flagship among them is right here. Doesn't look very impressive, but I'd like to unpack this thing's potential today.
And what is that?
This is what's referred to as an organometer or orgone accumulator, as it was originally known. Are you familiar at all with the works of Royal Raymond Rife?
No, unfortunately not. But yeah, you can obviously share.
Well, sorry, that was meant as Wilhelm Reich. Rife. I mixed those up a little bit. Are you familiar with Wilhelm Reich?
No, it doesn't ring a bell. But if you speak on him, I may recall something, but it doesn't ring a bell to me at the moment, no.
Wilhelm Reich was an inventor and philosopher who, subject to research, suggested that we could, and I should preface, I'm not a doctor and I'm not seeking to draw people away from taking medical advice, so don't take anything I say over what a doctor would tell you. But he suggested devices like this, minus the fact they were far bigger and you could actually physically get into the things, could help with people's immune systems by concentrating an unseen force he referred to as orgone energy.
Okay.
And depending on your spiritual or religious beliefs, you may refer to that as prana, vril,
Okay.
or the essence of the soul if you're agnostic. And in more scientific terms, what we're left with is a device that has alternating layers of ferromagnetic and non-ferromagnetic material. So in this case, it's four of one and three of the other. That being cotton interlaid with metallic wool. And what you get is something you cannot see unless you're using a Kirlian camera will be concentrated, then sent out this side. In scientific terms, my hypothesis is that do you understand how pain works in the human body on the physiological level?
Yes, somewhat.
I'll explain just for our audience so they can get their head around it. Um, what you get is you pinch and you will feel a sensation of pain that is used by an electromagnetic force. So electromagnetic signal starts in your hand, makes its way into your brain, and in the span of a split second, travels back down to issue the variant, the severity, and the area of the pain. And my hypothesis was that because this thing elicits an electromagnetic frequency with such a close resemblance to the pain relief response to brain issues for normal circumstances, that the body cannot tell the difference and finds itself getting spoofed. And in my research, I've given it to a lot of different people who suffer from chronic pain like arthritis, nerve damage, things to that effect. We've also used it to reduce menstrual pain, and in not all, granted, but in many cases, it's proven effective.
Okay.
So, with that in mind, I thought to try and raise the thing's profile wherever possible and make it known to the world. Do you think this is applicable to anybody in your social circle?
Okay. So what we do with these one-to-ones
Yeah.
is really answer questions to do with what we teach, which is mainly Wu-sabat. Of course, Wu-sabat covers all aspects of life. So in terms of obviously people coming on and introducing themselves, they can talk about, you know, their background, whatever they do, and if they want to share something that is truth or factual or based on facts and logic, then yes, of course, we would want to share that. In terms of what you described, it's science in the sense of when we're dealing with you'll often hear me say that we're electromagnetic semiconductors because frequencies, as you said, when you're dealing with pain, one of the things you do to say how do you prove that you are here, you pinch yourself, right? And by pinching yourself, what you're actually doing, and there's a book the master teacher put out called I think it's the Family Guide. It's either the Family Guide or the Mind or Your Potential, one of those. Because yeah, it was the Family Guide now that I recall. And I'm saying that to say that if an ant was crawling, this is how he describes it in the book. If an ant was crawling on your skin somewhere on your leg or wherever, you will feel that sensation. And like I just said, if you pinch yourself, your skin is obviously the biggest organ you have. But as you've also just described, you have many systems within your body. So you have the nervous system, you have, the electrical system within you, how when you pinch yourself, the nerve endings pick up that vibration and they send the messages through all the way to your brain. And then it sends back a, a response because most things are based on call and response anyway. So yeah, then you will then get to feel that sensation or that pain. This is why a lot of the times you hear people say that mind over matter, because you see people that can walk on hot coal and fires. You see people that can go into very ice cold water, and people can train themselves to be able to deal with all kinds of what we would consider pain. So yes, in that regard, you can use sound and frequency to heal anything if you know how to match the resonance frequency and to basically vibrate on that frequency, because we know that as long as you're able to vibrate on a particular resonance frequency, you can do things like go through walls and all kinds of stuff without making it spookism. So yeah, in relation to what you said from a scientific point of view, that's something that is absolutely possible and factual.
Great. I'm surprised you said you'd not heard of the works of Royal Raymond Rife I mistakenly brought up earlier, because this is exactly what he was talking about. The Rife microscope was made to identify a weakness of cancer by observing its color at the subatomical level. With a
Right,
keen understanding of the light-sound bridge, you
right.
could very easily interpret the color as saying what range of frequency would be deadly to the thing that it was the color of.
Mm,
And then he would effectively channel sound into people's bodies to make their sickness die.
right.
Yeah, that was Royal Raymond Rife. And
Yeah,
in
I
the
mean, there are
case of
many people that I may not have heard of, even though, we do study and research a lot. There's just so many people that have done some great works on the planet that, it's going to be unlikely that everybody knows about every single person. But I'm happy to learn and also research and learn more
well,
about.
thank you. It's painfully rare that someone comes at this with an open mind. I think I'll cover the subject of Reich's peers in a moment, what I'd call his peers. I'm not sure he actually interacted with any of them face to face, but
Right.
I'll unpack that in a moment. Um, In the case of the organometer, I wanted to mention the works of Heiko Lasik, who you might have heard of. In the 1980s, he did some research into this and was chiefly trying to figure out if it was effective against the big C.
Mhm.
Mentioned in that document was pain relief. That was something that was paid reference to. And I don't know a lot of people suffering from the big C, although I've had some experience with it. I thought to offer it up to people with various pains, and I couldn't really name them all, the amount of people that got better from various different sicknesses and conditions. Again, not trying to replace talking to your doctor, but I think it is well worth considering. And the one of the key USPs of this, on top of everything I've just described, is that look at this. You can tell just by looking at it. What do you think it would cost the average human being to create something like this?
I literally have no idea. I'd only be guessing, but um, I would say probably less than 20 quid or 50 quid.
About five.
Okay. But you know how industry works. They find out that something costs 5 quid, and then those that are all about capitalism and materialism will exploit that and charge £100 or something for something like very, very cheap.
Yeah. I could give you two examples, but it would possibly be illegal to do on YouTube, so I'm not
I
going to
think that's
expand on
important.
that.
I'm glad you keep saying the disclaimer. We're not professing here to be medical doctors and not here to stop people from seeking medical advice if they wish to do so. But at the same time, we're here to provide content that's educational, and it's about, yeah, entertainment and educational purposes.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a comedy coming out on February 1st that's made to do exactly that. Now, mercifully, I've been doing this for a few years and not run into any trouble with relation to this specifically. And
I didn't quite, because you kind of went straight into it, and I'm happy that we're going to have a great conversation about this. But I didn't get to introduce myself and just to find out how you came across us,
apologies.
and why you're here talking to me. Obviously, I'm Saken Sakamreye. I'm a student teacher of the master teacher, who we know as Pana Babianun, and Dr. Malachi Z. York. And many people have come across his writings and his works in many ways. So when we're talking about, solutions and dealing with how we heal ourselves, he's written extensively on the science of healing, going back all the way to the ancient Egyptian and the teachings there of how, to heal yourself. And we know, and he has taught us that every disease, including death, even though people may not look at death as a disease, he's explained that our ancestors are able to heal any disease. And once you know and have the correct information, you can heal anything and everything, including the big C, which has been utilized to exploit a lot of people, because there are people professing to be doing research on that big C, but for hundreds of years have never come up, supposedly never come up with a cure. But yet you have other people that don't have the same resources, such as Dr. Sebi, who is one of the healers that we quite familiar with, who was able to do that with very simple methods. Because once you start to look at any illness or any disease, when you go to the cellular level, you can then regenerate the cells or eradicate and heal things from the cell perspective. So once you go down to that level and beyond, it is possible to repair and fix and knit back any organ that has damages. But yeah, please feel free to continue.
Yeah, I want to say apologies. I should have asked you a bit about yourself. Things have been a bit trying in recent times. I want to say thank you for hosting me. You are a very intelligent man from what I can gather so far. And in the case of Dr. Sebi, I'm reminded, is it correct that they've still not released his autopsy report?
Absolutely, that's right. That's correct.
Right, nothing to hide, but you're doing the hiding. That's very
Yeah, just like
unconvincing.
the Epstein files and
I
any.
was about to say,
Yeah,
maybe they'll be dumb enough to do Dr. Sebi's autopsy report and I can do the control, cut and paste tool.
right. But yeah, go ahead.
It comes to something when you can get elbowed aside by a 5-year-old playing around on the computer, but let's
And
digress.
what's interesting with what you said about the cost of the device you've got, it's like, obviously we know big pharmaceutical companies and so forth, they're not in the business of curing anything. Obviously, they're in the business of dealing with the symptoms and suppressing them, so that you can continue repeatedly to, buy their products and services. So we know what's happened to many people that have come with alternative um, herbal solutions and natural ways of dealing with things, which would mean that you don't have to, buy into the mainstream narrative. But then, as you say, we have to keep making these disclaimers, because you know once you start to affect the profits of these big corporations, then they do anything to make sure that that doesn't happen. So yeah, go ahead.
No kidding. But in the case of the organometer, I've been in contact with someone who's referred me to the works of Tom DiFandino. He is working over in the States and has recently moved an orgonomic research lab from one part of the US to the coast.
Right.
And that has been the bulk of his work in the previous year. 2026 is set to do some more meaningful research, picking up where James DeMeo, who sadly passed away 4 years back, left off in relation to studying life at the subatomical level.
Mm.
In the case of the organometer, I debating how to phrase this. Like putting on myself now, you do feel a physiological effect, and it tends to make me feel a little less cold or repressed. Not to make it about myself, I have post-traumatic stress disorder, and there's a physical difference you can feel with this thing active. Don't know if you can see me pointing it there.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
I did some research as well on my channel, and it showed we took a glass of water and, well, a bottle. Then we put it inside two of them. It just about fit. And
Right.
upon taking it out, you could see a bizarre, sort of really strong pattern to it, strong but also quite smooth.
Hmm.
And I put a picture of this immediately beside frozen under normal conditions, and there is a detectable, visible difference that you can see with your own eyes.
Mm.
So I have been able to make this tangible. A lot of this falls on people's testimony and all things anecdotal, but you can't give a placebo effect to a glass of water.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the works of Dr.
Emoto,
Yeah,
a little bit. That's the man who had people try and offer up either love or hate to
that's right.
water, and it took
Yeah.
on different shapes.
Yeah, and you also touched on curling photography earlier on in your introduction. So, what people, like you say, people always want you to provide some kind of tangible evidence. But when you're starting to deal with things on a microscopic level and dealing with vibrations and frequency, unless you have the correct apparatus and equipment, it's going to be hard for people to see. But that research that he did with the crystallization of water, depending on what words were uttered or said to the different portions of water, just proved that your voice and the tone and the vibration of what you say, this is why languages are so key, can actually have a profound effect on you and on whatever that's been subjected to. So again, yeah, it's in line with with what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the subject of Wilhelm Reich, I'm going to separate the inventor from the invention. The invention, very good. The inventor, indications are probably not. He was suspected for doing some very nasty
Technical,
stuff
yeah.
with his clients, for want of a better word. With his patients is a little more accurate.
Mm.
And he also wrote some, I can't believe he actually just played it completely straight, blurted out what he was thinking in relation to how he coupled with somebody. But I'm not going to describe it in graphic detail. So I'm not trying to convince anyone that Wilhelm Reich was necessarily a morally good character, but he definitely was an intelligent one and understood physiological beings and human psyche.
Hmm.
And as for his downfall, the thing that took him down in the end, I want to make a sorry to bring this up, but all that maltreatment that was taking place at his practice, no action was taken by the law. The government didn't try to stop it. A couple of complaints in the press turned up, but that was it. However, when he shipped one of his devices across state lines, and by he I mean his associate, that got him convicted for contempt of court and sent to jail. And it really says a lot about the sincerity or lack thereof of the AMA/FDA that the maltreatment was tolerated, but some shipping wasn't. And I'm
Mm.
reminded of how he was given a letter by the FDA. This letter told him two things. One, the devices don't work and they're ineffective. Two, you need to destroy the devices so that they become ineffective.
Okay.
Slight contradiction in terms there.
Absolutely. I mean, even if we look at the works of Nikola Tesla and people like that, you see that a lot of the stuff was hidden. Yeah, it's like the word science fiction, isn't it? They're totally contradicting each other. One way you're saying this is science. Science is based on, knowledge and studying and finding out truth and evidence, and fiction is the opposite. So putting them together is just a matter of confusing people. And when you're talking about the FDA and the different regulatory bodies and big pharma or whatever, like you have to remember that money and profit driven entities have a lot to say about what is right and what is wrong. And this is why a lot of times the people that I've come in contact with who were diagnosed with the big C and to a level of there's no return, were still able to reverse and cure themselves. So we have to be able to take our health into our own hands and research and do things without just following like sheep or sheeple. So yeah, that's the practical way of going about whenever you're diagnosed. You have to remember that we live in a world of various systems and hierarchy, and motives and agendas play a big part in how you heal yourself and so on.
No kidding. I mean, I'm reminded the names you mentioned, like Tesla and such. I wanted to point out a lot of why I strongly suspect, and in the case of organometer, outright know that these things have some tangible, detectable improvement. Is look at the amount of people who are very close to each other. When I described his peers earlier, if I were to list them, there'd be Wilhelm Reich, Thomas Galen Hieronymus, Antoine Priore, Nikola Tesla, Dinshar Gardiali, George Lakhovsky, Gaston Naessens, and I think that's everyone. But the list is so big, even I have a little bit of trouble with it now and then. Did you recognize any of those names
Yeah,
besides Tesla?
no, I'm not familiar with most of those, but again, if you post them in the chat, I will be happy to look more into them. And that's why I guess the perspective we come from, although good, right information, especially when it deals with health, is something that people should definitely learn and know about. But of course, because I don't know of these people, I'm going to have to do my own due diligence and research, and I have to take your word for it. I mean, so far, what you've been saying, it sounds very plausible and intelligent and, in line with
Thank you.
some of the teachings that we have. So, but of course, I'm gonna have to go and do more research, and it's great because sometimes myself personally, although we do the ask us anything as it pertains to our doctrine and the information that we teach by way of the master teacher, we are we're encouraged to study everything and learn as much as possible. And it's great for me when I hear something new that I've not come across, or someone's work that I've never come across. So that just means that I'm gonna be able to learn more in that particular field. But at the same time, race and the physiology of different people and different races on the planet has a play, because you find that a lot of and this is not directed at you per se, but a lot of Europeans will study a lot of Europeans, whether it's going back to like the Romans and the Greeks and the philosophers and so forth. And we, as in the Negroid race, we will study a lot of other people that pertain to the works that we are familiar with. So then you have the Asian and different people, but at the end of the day, right knowledge is right knowledge. Truth is truth. It doesn't matter who is coming from, and if it's something that reasons out and is sound, then it's something that we would definitely look into and study further.
Yeah, very well put. I mean, by all means, use me as a signpost. That's what I want to be. I'm not trying to replace a primary source or a doctor, as I've mentioned, but I could provide a playlist that will give you um, documentaries I have made on all the people I mentioned, except Gaston Naessens, who I'm still working on, and
Right.
Thomas Galen Hieronymus.
And what's
And
great, sorry to interrupt you quickly, is that it's good to hear different perspectives, because when we say to people that This is about humanity. It's about truth, as opposed to lies and misconceptions and distortions. It's great when the audience is a worldwide audience, so it's great when we do have someone from a different perspective that is sharing truth, because sometimes our bias in terms of how we're programmed by the mainstream and the masses to only look in one direction and get distracted, we often miss things that are going on from another perspective. So, yeah, we definitely are very pleased to have you on the platform to share what you know, if it will make and help people on the planet and help humanity. So, please continue.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I don't mind acting as a signpost. Another thing I wanted to mention is it's not offensive at all for what you said about Europeans. I mean, I'm reminded that though not European, back in 2012, Glaxo and Bayer, I believe those to be American-based industries, yes?
That's right. Mhm.
They were making heavy investments in ancient Chinese alchemy that was outlawed under Liu Ping as far back as no, I think it was been pre 1000, let alone 1500s. So the presence of, examining other cultures as reference points is a very valid thing to do. I mean, Din Shah Gardiali, you may have guessed by the name, was Indian originally. The bulk of them were American, but it does say something to me that it didn't matter where you were from. If you were intelligent enough, you wound up with the same conclusion.
Right.
Antoine Priore was Italian, though mostly operated in France. One other point I wanted to make is I recall hearing somewhere that the first successful C-section was done in Africa. Have you heard of that before?
I have, yes. And like you say, the thing about America is, even though people claim to be Americans, or it's a melting pot. And when you start to define what makes somebody an American, or whatever, like based on a location, you start to find out that it doesn't really make sense, because you have a lot of people that claim to be Americans that are actual from a German origin, in terms of during that period where you're talking about those types of scientists like Nikola Tesla, and even when they carried out the Philadelphia experiment and things like that. After the wars, World War One and Two, a lot of people, that even the Third Reich and different people, because Hitler is a character that is also mentioned negatively in many ways. But a lot of those people ended up in America. So people claim to be America, but their background or their origins are sometimes not just from America, because it is a melting pot. And as far as C-section and things like that, this is why I mentioned about ancient Egypt, because a lot of things that were being done back then, like even brain surgery, was being done in ancient Egypt. Um, so when you start to look at, like you say, like the origins of knowledge, whether it's health or anything to do with things that are beyond just the average or common knowledge, you will have to look worldwide and look at the different pioneers that have actually kind of like been at the forefront of the studies. And it actually doesn't really matter in terms of their ethnicity to that degree, because if you're a scientist and you are about science, not being bought out to just follow the narrative because of material gain, then your passion is going to be science and the study of knowing and proving things. But yeah, continue. Let's unpack what you want to share.
I think one of the other points I wanted to raise was the character of the medical industry. I'm guessing you're already somewhat against them. You seem to have done your research. But it'd be good to get your opinion on this actually. Did you ever read the Flexner report?
No.
Released in 1910, it contained things that you could almost take as a joke,
Mm,
saying that chiropractic medicine had no value and in a couple of decades it would be unheard of.
right.
Now, bear in mind, that was a statement made in 1910. It naturally drove the chiropractic practice back and nearly off the map for many decades. Do you know why the AMA eventually retracted that statement and the effect went away?
No, entirely, and I'll be happy for you to share. But what I did want to say on that, when you mentioned about, I can't remember the guy's name you mentioned that you said was from India or something.
Din Shah.
That's right. It's because, like I said previously, alternative medicines or things to do with like looking beyond the physical um, wasn't really taken seriously in the Western world for a very long time because what we teach is that you have what people would consider the unseen world with the seen world. And people might to call these spirit and soul and things like that, but there is a part of you, another essence or body of you that interacts with your physical and that dealing with, even when you're looking at acupuncture and using certain methods like we were saying, frequencies and so forth, to heal from the vibrational level in terms of often when something happens in the physical, it's a correlation to something that's happening on the higher vibration or the what people call the spiritual. So like it was only recently that people started to look at things like your well-being mentally and your psychological well-being and that all of these things do correlate and relate. So Western medicine has started to evolve and look at alternative medicines and looking at things like sound healing and meditation and acupuncture and all these kind of things. So I'll let you carry on in terms of explaining why they had to retract. But yeah, now there is a big industry of natural remedies, which wasn't really considered, back in the days. But go ahead.
I wanted to pick up on one thing that you said when, correct me if I'm wrong here, you said that the physical being is sometimes affected by the unseen, yeah?
Yeah, all your
I
other
am rem
parts.
Yeah, I'm reminded a bit of when I was being verbally abused by somebody and I didn't grasp how badly it affected me or some incidents in my life. I looked at it, I experienced it, I knew it was bad, but only in hindsight did I really begin to get my head around, oh my God, how did I come out alive?
I
That
understand.
sort of thing.
Yeah,
Because, I suppose whether that's just a natural thing for everybody or the fact I have a bit of an exercised shock absorber when it comes to trauma, put it that way. I can kind of grasp onto what you mean there from personal experience. But
that's
as
an
to
excellent
why,
example because, like, going back to that, the water experiment with Dr. Moto, it's like we forget that the words that are spoken to you are we are, again, electromagnetic semiconductors. So we store these energies, right? We store things on a cellular level. Our memories are stored in your cells. And that's why, like you say, like traumatic experiences, or even someone is constantly abusing somebody, because you have mental abuse, you have physical abuse, you have, all types of abuses. And this is why it's very important to be around the right types of environments that are conducive for your health. Because when you're in nature or you're, in the sun, and natural nature can heal you as well. So what you just described is so important because one of the most famous words in the 21st century that you hear a lot of people using is narcissist or being a narcissist. And and that's because of those aspects of our lives where we do store memories and store trauma and then cancers and all these types of things basically can evolve. I said the word can evolve from these types of memories as well. So memory stored in different aspects of your being as opposed to just what people look at as your brain and your mind. You have different parts of your organs that also store traumatic memories and PSTD, post traumatic, was it a PST?
PTSD.
That's it. PTSD is something that a lot of people, soldiers and so forth, experience when, even though they're no longer in that environment doing and going through the things they did. They've actually stored a lot of very traumatic experiences and things that they've seen. And your eyes, for example, are like solar panels. So they do store and remember things that from your childhood all the way up until today. So I'm glad you shared that in relation to what we're saying about, there are aspects of your being that also need to be addressed for the physical aspect to be healed.
Yeah, all right. Thank you. That's very well put. And the reason that the AMA eventually retracted or stopped acting on that statement from the Flexner report was in 1990, that being 8 decades after it was decreed, they
Mm.
were taken to court. Well, initially, that started in the 70s, took place through the entirety of the 80s, and ended in the very early 90s. Chester Wilk, alongside some other chiropractors, led a lawsuit against the AMA and some other organizations that were opposing them. At the end of which, the AMA was found guilty for antitrust violations, and hospitals were able to employ chiropractors. So it says everything about the AMA's character, that they only stopped us from limping around and having dislocated parts when they were dragged kicking and screaming
Really?
away from their stance. And that isn't even the only occasion. They were in hot water for antitrust violations, Sherman antitrust laws in the 1930s and 40s, with a lawsuit that culminated in them getting found guilty. And I
Mm.
don't wish to belabor the point, but the AMA was run by a man named George Sims, I believe. Have you heard of him?
It rings a slight bell because I was reading something to do with a lot of the experiments that were carried out. Do you know about things like MK Ultra and even some of the things that were featured in the movie Boys from Brazil with some of the things that the Germans were doing with like Hitler and cloning and stuff like that. It kind of that name seems to have come up around when I was doing some research relating to that, if I'm correct. But
Well, MK Ultra. MK Ultra was the bastard offspring of Project Monarch, which
right,
itself was the bastard offspring of something. I don't recall its grandfather's name, but
yeah,
I think it came up and down a few times. And yes, I've heard of it. I've heard of it being suggested as the reason that JFK, RFK, and Princess
exactly,
Diana were killed.
right. And even bringing it up to today, there's a lot of information that it's now been related to, as you say, those types of programming and trigger words and people, even like you said, JFK and certain things. So a lot of those early experiments and projects have evolved to today. And when we start to explore and look into who governs and polices, because even when you talk about lawsuits, for example, you'll find that like who polices the police is a phrase I would like to use because if you are able to manipulate and because a lot of these big pharmaceutical companies, they even buy judges, they buy the educational institutions, they fund most of the projects. So you will find that sometimes people that are doing research will dispel or um, try to ridicule people who have actually evidence-based research because they have to push a particular narrative. And so when you go into court and to judges now, we have to be very careful as to whether or not they're going to be just in their judgment. Because if you're able to buy, let's say, the Supreme Court, buy the United Nations, by buy, I mean you have a heavy, even with Bill Gates and what he's doing, not being
Yeah, not
professional to
explicitly
do
bribe, not
right.
explicitly offer a cash bribe.
Exactly. And so, a lot of things can be distorted to suppress. And so it's interesting that you're saying they were actually sued and were successful, in yeah. But you have to be able to do that in a forum where you're going to get justice. And I think now it's becoming less so because when you're looking at the people, even when we look at the whole pandemic recently, you look at the people that are running it, that are pushing a particular narrative, as opposed to those who are basing it on actual scientific evidence. You start to see that, yeah, it's very difficult nowadays to even bring people to justice in terms of, the sinister things that they're doing. But please continue.
Yeah, I mean, I could list a few examples of injustice in my own life, but I'm not trying to make this into a sort of interview for me biography. I'll keep it relevant to the topic.
Sure.
The AMA. Oh yes, the AMA was led by George Sims and George Simmons. That's a bit confusing. But
Mm.
George Simmons was in charge when the Flexner Report was commissioned. And a few years later, 1924, he was found guilty for abusing his wife, trying to poison her either to insanity or suicide. And he was found guilty of trying to frame her for insanity. This inspired the film Gaslight and even the term that makes its way into our modern pop culture. It ties back to that experience in which Ingrid Bergman played the wife. And upon being found guilty, his career suffered death by unpopularity. He handed over responsibilities to a man named Morris Fishbein. Does that ring any bells?
No, unfortunately.
He's reviled chiefly for supporting that anti-chiropractic thing, but he also did such things as mishandled the World's Fair of Chicago, which led to a lot of people getting sick because he was not communicating what you should and shouldn't do, and ended up people getting a lot more sick and then going back to their hometowns with it. He challenged Royal Raymond Rife, who I mistakenly brought up earlier, and crucially this, right? He funded a lawsuit by Philip Hoyland, who tried to use access privileges he didn't have on account of getting fired, to sue Rife for something he had no legal rights to. And the thing is here, whether or not he stood a chance, he didn't, is not relevant. I've read the court transcript. I had the privilege of reading the original notes. They were given to me by Stephen Ross, PhD, who is today in possession of them. And honestly, sometimes it reads genuinely like a comedy, like some American sitcom where you're just supposed to laugh at the idiot trying to lead the lawsuit with some of
Right.
the stuff he was coming out with. But the crucial point here is that Royal Raymond Rife found it expensive, and crucially, he found it stressful, and it drove him into severe depression and alcoholism, and it indirectly killed off his research team and everything he had going for him. So the winning the case was never an issue. It was just a question of stress them out to extremity.
Hmm.
And it does speak to the character of the AMA. They lost that lawsuit, and the judge even said, if you bring the AMA into a courtroom, I will preside over it. The judge was hinting at it and wanting him to lead the case, but Rife was just too damaged. And I'm not going to be harsh to the man. He dealt with his demons. I don't know what all of them are, but I wish he had taken them on because he probably would have won.
Yeah. As you're saying, we could probably talk about a million different situations and cases. But could we try and relate it or bring it back to um, the device you mentioned at the beginning,
Yes, yes. Sorry, I
and
just
what,
wanted to
yeah,
say,
just so that we can, because again, we don't want to go off on too many different tangents,
I'm
and
sorry. Yeah, talking to you is very interesting, but I should keep this a bit more concise. I brought
that's
that up to make the point. Look at who stopped this. Look at their character. You
mm.
shouldn't be taking them seriously in regards to legality, or when you take into account these, you see the flaws at least.
Where, if I may ask, did you obtain that? Is that easily available? Is it something that people can get quite easily, or
It is handcrafted by myself and my friend, who I nicknamed the Quartermaster, and it can be assembled in about one day. It's quite easy if you're equipped with the cotton, a stapler, and some 000 non-aluminium steel wool. Crucially, in the interest of helping people wherever I can, I have a video on my channel, a how-to guide that will talk you through this. And if you've
and
got,
just for the listening audience, before we go, and look at it on your sites, etc.
Mhm.
How do you use it, and what does it do? What are the kind of quick benefits?
Well, there's a list of do's and don'ts. If you don't meet the criteria explained in the how to assemble video, don't use it. So if you've got a copper implant, you're a nuclear radiation survivor, or you know that this thing has been exposed to an X-ray, don't use it. But
Right,
what you do is you'd merely point it at this, pretend I have arthritis in the fingers. Don't put it in or touch it because that will weaken it, but keep it at about that distance. Just wait, move it around a little bit. And provided you're not in a highly polluted area or near a nuclear spill like Chernobyl, you should be just fine to wait for a few seconds. And in many, although not all cases, I'm told that pain significantly reduces. And for the women of our audience, it's been known to reduce period pain in many cases.
right.
So that is of crucial importance to put that across. And if you've got with you the competence and the budget to assemble a loaf of bread, you'll be able to do this.
Okay. All right.
And
So
to close things out, I'd
yeah,
like to just talk a bit about what inspired me to do it. Initially, it was pure curiosity, but can you see this picture in the background here, the orangish one?
yes, I can.
You may not be able to make it out, but that's an image of the Venetian canals, and it was painted by my father in 2003. He passed in the very end of summer 2017 from cancer. This was before I knew about this or any of its peers. And had I known, he might still be with me. And that's a deeply sad thing, but I use it as fuel. It's a lot of what inspires me to keep going.
Mm,
That and there was another incident where someone who is like a sister to me asked for access to one of these things due to severe damage in her back,
mhm.
and it was actually making her have some extremely dangerous thoughts about what she'd do to herself. I'm not trying to get graphic here, but you get the idea. So I just wanted to pay a bit of reference to, you know, why continue doing it.
Okay. You mentioned about your father would still be with you. What are your thoughts on you cannot destroy energy?
I've not studied it all that closely, but as someone who has like given up on himself completely and then gotten back up from it a few times, I think there is some truth to it. I've been dead on my bed, having given up on life and then hit the reset button. So I'm not the expert, but I can offer that much up and say I think it's worth investigating.
Yeah, I was just curious because your father, even though he has left this particular realm of physical vibration, he's still he's still there because we know in science that you can only transform energy, you can't really destroy it, but it can, like we know the basics of going from solid liquid to gas and beyond to what we teach, which is ether.
Yeah,
So I'm just saying that when we teach about healing yourself and getting assistance from higher abodes or realms, you can actually meditate, you can do certain rituals so that you can pull that energy, which we refer to as the healing energy, like nine ether or the green energy, because when you look at nature, the trees and they're green, and that's a healing energy. So as you mentioned before, you can actually see that different vibrations in terms of sound relate to particular frequencies and colors as well. So it is possible to pull that energy, that green healing energy, as we're taught by the Master Panda Babyanon to heal yourself. So sometimes it's a matter of, you may have a pain or something somewhere, and you can utilize these methods that we teach to focus on the area and pull that energy and even kind of like run it through your body, as if like you were using a laser to remove the pain and the areas that are causing you some type of when we say disease, we're really saying dis anti ease. So when you're not at ease, you're disease, then you're going
yeah,
to be able to, yeah, that's how you can reduce that pain and so forth.
yeah. I am reminded of my experience. Like the first time I tried, I kicked around a bit and did it somewhat incompetently. But the first time I really nailed meditation, got what you might call a hole in one.
Mm,
When I finished, I got up and it was uncanny. It was bizarre for somebody like myself to not have voices in my head screaming at me and insulting me. I mean,
mm.
it's not that I missed them, but it was strange, you
Yeah,
know?
'cause it's
And
a
the same goes for working up some courage to do something. There's an almost transcendent feeling to it, like you're not quite there.
right. There's a movie called Transcendence, which I always recommend for people to watch as well, which deals with how you evolve consciously. I mean, there are other movies such as the movie Lucy and so on, because when you start to look at where does the power come from, where does the energy come from that will motivate certain people or heal people and so on and so forth. You know, there are people who they bring it to a religious kind of connotation with people using their hands to heal, or the references in the Bible like Jesus healing somebody and so on and so forth. So there's always truth to whatever hypothesis somebody may have. So yeah, these things about how you channel energy, because your body and the planet itself, as you know, has ley lines and meridian points. And, even within your body, you have the way that energy travels and, through your nervous system, through your various systems, and how you can actually utilize that energy. Even when we start to look at things like extraterrestrials or beings that are supposedly more highly evolved, how they're able to come and utilize the grid of the planet. Even with Nikola Tesla's work, he was about how do you tap into these energies that are surrounding us so that you don't have to, for example, pay. So there was the whole argument of AC and DC. And again, history tells us that those who want to profit from pushing a particular alternative are going to go against things like free energy. You see, so I'm saying don't underestimate the power that you have to be able to still tap into beings and other realms, including like your relatives and people that have crossed over, have passed on, and that we teach that those are your ancestors that you can call on that can assist you from those realms. You see, so the whole thing about energy is so important in relation to healing. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliantly put. Well, I think that covers everything about the organometer. Now, one thing I'd like to leave off on is one, what can you recommend that I should look up from your channel or just anywhere? What do you think is some of the best information I could take in? Because you know your way around health and the human condition quite a lot. Secondly, can you tell me about the inspiration of your outfit? Because it's very good. I've never seen anything quite like it.
Thank you. So for the first question is having an open mind as you have, and to recognize that when we say have an open mind, is that you're literally not going to be bound by restrictions and constitutions and programming that teaches you like you can only fit in this box or this bubble and that's it, because that limits you. The constructs that are put together in terms of how the masses are controlled are based on rudimentary, low vibrational stuff that generates the fear of I'm not able to heal myself, or I have to think and believe the same way that the people I'm in a group with think and believe. Um, and then it just limits you to the point where you follow one book or you follow one political party or you just follow constructs that have been put in place. So having an open mind is going to make you limitless. It's going to make you look at things from different people's perspectives, read everything, study everything, and find the facts within or truth within everything. And if you can do that, then you will be open to look at different methods of healing, such as the energy sources I was talking about in terms of the various energies within the electromagnetic spectrum. And then you start to do things like the meditation. You start to do things like communicating with, you know, beings outside of, you know, what you know to be true. Because if you think about the electromagnetic spectrum, our senses limit us because they say that you can only see the visible light spectrum, which is between like, I think 400 and 700 nanometers. But then there are things that you can't see beyond that. And it's the same with your hearing. You know, people will say you can only hear to certain hertz, but yet you'll have dog whistles and dogs that can hear beyond certain frequencies. So these senses that we have been told are five, you know, the tasting, the smelling, the hearing, and the touch. These are all really about perception and awareness, but there are states beyond all of those. And this is where we start to teach about how we evolved and where did we evolve from and where we evolve into. And we start to look at higher senses like telepathy, which is it's a phenomenon that many people have studied. Things like remote viewing, clairvoyance, intuition, you know, psychometry. These are studies that once you open your mind from being limited by dogmas of men and religions and things like that, you're going to be a well-rounded person, and then you're going to tap into things that you probably never even looked at. And the second question regarding the outfit,
Mhm.
um, you know, it's about culture, and most people that have a culture are recognized by their dress, particularly their headdress as well. So if you look at maybe a Sikh, you know, you're going to see them with their turban, and, you know, you look at, yeah, exactly. You look at any, like, even you look at the Pope and look at, you know, different characters, they will have a, well, even when we bring it down to like institutions today where there's the police or the medical world or, you know, doctors or whatever, they have a distinctive attire that you can recognize, oh, that person is a, you know, it's a doctor if they're wearing their white coat or whatever. So as people of culture, our culture is Wu-sabat, we we are very creative as well. That's the other thing relating to the first part of your question about not being limited, because creativity is something that cannot be contained. So as creative people, you should be able to create things other than what the mainstream is saying you should wear this, you know, suit and ties or bow ties or, yeah. So we create for ourselves, our culture. And when we go back and look at our ancestors in ancient Egypt, this was the type of attire that they also wore. If you look at the crowns, but yeah, so that's where it comes from. It comes from our culture. It's our cultural attire and cultural dress. But anyone who wants to live that way of life or culture can then also be a part of everything that we have in our culture, whether it's the language, what we teach, how we dress, our music, our foods, etc. You can partake, just like we experience, you know, Indian food or Chinese food or, you know, other culture that have something to give. So we have a lot to share with the world. And so, yeah, this is why we dress like this. I hope that helps.
Mhm. Yeah, it does. Thank you. Well, brilliant. This has been a well worthwhile interview. I'm going to take a closer look at some of your other videos as well, because I need more of this in my life, most certainly. I wish I'd had it sooner in my life, in fact.
We feel
So,
the same whenever we meet like-minded people who you can actually have a decent conversation and they're able to, yeah, like reciprocate, you know, because when you're in a vibration, like I say, if that resonance frequency matches somebody else, you're able to engage. But if you're trying to bring people and talk about things beyond people, places, and things, or just beyond the dogma and the programming, sometimes people find it very hard to let go of the, you know, the crux that they've been holding on to all their life. But in life, in just natural nature, the one thing that's constant is change. So you can't be stagnant. You have to be willing to, like they say, go down that I don't know why they use a rabbit, but go down the rabbit hole and like literally, it's an adventure as well. You explore and learn so much because our planet, our galaxy, our universe, the solar system, there's just so much that we've still yet to uncover and learn. So yeah, it's very important that you can meet people, you can have levels of conversations where
Yeah.
feeds you. Yeah, so
Yeah, excellent. The rabbit hole, I think, relates to Alice in Wonderland. That's where the term comes from.
right, yeah.
And my final question to you is, do you think you could see yourself recommending or offering one of these to anyone in your life for any variant of pain?
Like with anything, I definitely would. I'm curious enough to look into it and at least do some research. And if it works, it works, and people, want to cure pain, and yeah, so definitely we recommend things that work and that are safe, natural, because yeah, we do recognize that you really have to take your health into your own hands. Even though we say that, we always also say like we're not providing medical advice, and ultimately it's down to the person to make the best decision for themselves by getting medical advice if they need it. But we are all about alternative solutions that are natural. So yes, the answer will definitely be yes. I'll definitely look into it. And you know how it works with things. If you use something and it works for you and you're happy with it, you automatically just refer other people to it. If you're about helping and getting them to also, get relief. So yeah, absolutely.
All right, thank you so much. It's been a
No problem.
pleasure.
Yeah. We'll contact you to get hold of one and or a few to try out.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't do that because in sending it to you via the mail, it would receive an X-ray due
Okay.
to the post, and it would inevitably sort of carry with it that radiation and become dangerous.
All
So
right.
you
Well,
would,
we'll talk about how we get hold of some.
right, I'm actually going to pitch the idea to David Icke himself next month, so wish me luck.
We don't deal with luck, just manifest it.
All right, yeah,
You've
just
already got it. So that's what we want to do. All right. Thank you.
thank you.
Great conversation. Thank you.
Aye.
Why do as we say. Bye.